Welcome to episode 71 of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. I'm your host and fellow student, Michelle Nelson, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can make smart decisions, communicate clearly, and build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. This week, I have a meeting with a house designer and I am super excited. So in this episode, we'll talk about what you and I should do to prepare for those initial design meetings. What documents and information we need for those meetings to be less time consuming and more successful. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about how to choose a designer or architect. If you've listened to the show for a while, then you probably can figure that out. You ask friends and families and even some contractors for their recommendations. And you get several references before settling on a house designer or architect. What we'll concentrate on today is what we'll do after we've chosen a specific design professional, what we can do to make our meetings more effective. Before we get to that, let's go over a few pro terms: architect, draftsman, and house designer. Architects have at least a bachelor's degree in architecture or a related field. They've also completed an internship under the direction of an experienced licensed architect. After their internship, architects must pass 7 separate exams covering all facets of architecture. Those exams must be successfully completed before an architect can apply for a license. Architects, by definition, must be officially registered and licensed by the governing architecture board in their state or territory. Many states also have continuing education requirements for license renewal. Finally, architects must be covered by liability insurance. Draftsman. A draftsman or draftsperson is someone who has attained a certificate or diploma in architectural drawing or drafting. He or she prepares construction drawings and documents. Some draftsmen are employed by architectural design firms and design build firms, but other ones are self-employed. Many architects give their ideas to draftsmen, and the draftsman is the one who puts the design on paper. Third on our pro term list is house designers, also known as building designers. House designers design and draw house plans. They shouldn't be confused with interior designers, who primarily design the interior decor of a house, concentrating on things like paint colors, furniture, tile, and flooring. House designers, like architects, design the structure and layout of the house. They sometimes work with architectural firms, but they're often self-employed. In many cases, house designers are trained draftsmen. And in other cases, they're actually graduates of architecture school. They just haven't completed their requirements for a license. In some areas of the U.S., an architect is required for very large houses, like houses over 10,000 square feet. And some regions require an architect's or engineer's stamp of approval of all house plans, whether the plans were purchased online or drawn by a house designer. Call your building inspector office to make sure that you know what your requirements are for your region. So in summary, an architect has at least a bachelor's degree in architecture or a related field and is licensed and insured. A draftsman has much less formal education, with only a diploma or certificate in architectural drawing. And a building designer may be a draftsman, or he may have the same education as an architect, but without having completed the licensing requirements. Okay, moving on. Like I said, we're meeting with a house designer this week, someone who came highly recommended by friends. I met with him several weeks ago too, and in that initial meeting, we didn't talk a lot about my project. Instead, we mostly kind of chatted informally. I wanted to see if we liked each other and how easily we communicated with each other. I took a look at some pictures of several of his past projects too, to see what his overall style was and to see if it's similar to what my husband and I like. Most of his houses were transitional in style. That's that style that's somewhere between traditional and contemporary, and that's our preferred style. If he had lots of houses that were ultra contemporary or super traditional or tiny houses, I probably would have chosen another designer. Not that I don't think that designers can draw various styles, but I think they may come up with more ideas and better solutions if they're working on a style of house that they're used to. I decided on a house designer instead of an architect for 2 main reasons. The first is cost. Architects' fees vary. They do vary considerably, but the ones that I spoke with and have heard about were charging tens of thousands of dollars for a plan. Not thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And I just could not justify that amount of money. Maybe I would be more inclined to choose an architect if I had no idea what I wanted in a house, if I needed someone to design a house from scratch. But because we've visited so many model homes and show homes, and we've put so much thought into what we actually want, we've got very definite ideas about how we want our house designed. And that's the second reason that I decided on a house designer instead of an architect, because we don't really need a lot of house ideas. We have tons of ideas and even a rough layout of the house already on paper. We just need someone to take that rough plan, tweak it, and put it in CAD. All right, pop quiz. What is CAD? C-A-D. We talked about CAD in episode 52. Do you remember what CAD is? Well, CAD stands for Computer Aided Design or Drafting. Sometimes it's referred to as AutoCAD. It's software that's used by architects, engineers, and designers to create blueprints and renderings. This is in contrast to drawing blueprints by hand, which some professionals still do, but many feel like CAD software is more efficient than hand drawing. I chose a designer who does CAD drawings because I'm pretty sure I'll want a 3D rendering of our plans so that we can see a photorealistic picture of our house before it's built. Most rendering companies prefer CAD drawings to create 3D renderings. If you want to hear more about 3D renderings, take a listen to episode 52. I'll include a link in the show notes to that episode. House designers in most areas charge about 25 to 40 cents per square foot. Now, some people would argue that you could find licensed architects that charge similarly, but that hasn't been my experience. I've found that architects charge by the hour, $65 to $200 per hour. And I hate paying an hourly rate. There's just too much wiggle room in an hourly rate. I'm a flat fee kind of girl. So in my research, house designers charge way less than most architects and a little bit more than most completed house plans that you can buy online. If you find an online house plan from a reputable company and you absolutely love it, you should buy it. That is the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to go. And if you find a plan that's almost perfect for you, but you want a few changes, it's usually pretty cost effective to buy the plan and have it tweaked by a designer. But if you're like me and you can't find a completed plan that you love, and you want your house drawn by a designer or architect, let's talk about some things that you can do to make those first working meetings more productive. And I'm saying first working meetings because I really do suggest that your initial meeting be the one that's more of a casual chat to see if you feel good about the designer and how he or she communicates. Many people wonder if it's better to give more or less information to a designer or architect before they start designing your house. Is it better to tell them upfront what you want and need in a house, or to not lead them at all so that they can come up with their own unique ideas? What I've learned from talking to house designers and architects and doing research online is that they want to be led by the homeowner. They want to know what the homeowner wants. There are millions of styles and designs that they can come up with, and they would be good designs, but with no input from the homeowner, they might be a design that's not good for the homeowner's lifestyle, that doesn't work for the homeowner and his family. The more information that you can share about what you want, the better. It's like showing pictures to a hairstylist before you get a new haircut. Although they're trained professionals with lots of ideas, you want to make sure that they know what you're expecting. Just remember that the real value in hiring a designer comes when you give them some room to create something that's unique just for you. So tell them what you want and need in your house, but be open to some of their ideas too. Create a list of wants and needs before you meet with your designer. A successful meeting will depend on your ability to clearly describe your requirements, your design style, how you plan to live and entertain in the house, and your budget. Ask yourself questions like, do we want to entertain on a regular basis? And do we want to entertain inside, outside, or both? Does our house need to be pet or kid-friendly? Do we want a first-floor master? Do we need our house to be accessible to the handicapped or elderly? Do we want to work from home? Would we like a dedicated space for crafting, sewing, woodworking, or other hobbies? What rooms will we spend the most time in? Think about how you actually live presently and how you'll most likely live in the future. Here are some things that you should do before your initial working meetings. Make one list of must-haves and a second wish list of things that you would like to have but could live without. Now, I know that must-have is a relative term, and what one family considers a necessity might be considered a luxury by another family. So just based on how you and your family live, what are your must-haves? And to be more organized in your thinking, write the list down room by room. So for example, in my master bathroom, my must-haves are 2 separate sinks and vanities, one for my husband and one for myself, a window to let in natural light, and separate shower and bathtub. On my wish list of what would be nice but isn't really necessary are a fireplace, a steam shower, radiant heated floors, and a toilet seat bidet. Those are definitely splurges, and we could definitely live happily and comfortably without those things, but it would be nice to have them. I fell in love with the idea of heated bathroom floors and built-in toilet seat bidets when I did some research for them a few months ago. I did a whole episode on them called Practical Luxury for Your Master Bath that's totally worth the splurge. Look at the link in the show notes if you want to hear more about that. Now, that steam shower, the heated floors, and the toilet seat bidet, they require extra plumbing and wiring, so I want to make sure that my designer knows that I'm thinking about including those things. What you don't actually have to decide on decor or finishes before your meeting. So decisions like stained versus painted cabinets or type of tile or flooring can probably wait. But if you want things that require extra plumbing or wiring, such as a steam shower or heated floors, those things should be on your lists. If you haven't already, start curating and collecting your ideas by tearing out pictures and magazines and saving pictures that appeal to you online. Apps like Pinterest and House are super helpful for collecting those ideas. Be ready to show your house designer photos of architectural styles and room layouts, shapes of ceilings and stairwells, things that would be important for him to include in the construction drawing. And be able to communicate what exactly you like about a design or a room. Is it the clean lines, the large windows? Is it the open concept, the high ceilings? After you find some pictures that you like, figure out what you like about them so that you can communicate that to the designer. And if you found a few house plans that you like online, save those too. Then you can show the designer what you like about each plan. If you know how you want your house laid out, draw a simple sketch on paper and give that to the designer for reference. That's exactly what we're doing. I thought about how we actually live on our house during the week and on the weekend, what habits and routines we've established, and what layout would make living in our house easier and more comfortable. I literally thought about what my husband and I do from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed, and what we do in our house on weekends. For example, because I get up earlier than my husband most mornings, I want to be able to get dressed without disturbing him. So I want a closet that's large enough for me to get dressed in. That way, I don't disturb him while he's sleeping. And because we often have friends and family over on weekends for casual potluck dinners, I want a large open kitchen and informal dining area that's open to the living room. When making decisions about layout and style of the house, include all the decision makers. Spouses and partners for sure, and maybe even your children if you'd like their input on the house. Try to come to an agreement on most things before meeting with your designer, so less time is taken during the meeting trying to come to a compromise. For things that you can't agree upon, ask your designer for his suggestions about what would appeal to everyone. Another thing to do before your meeting is to estimate the square footage that you want and how many bedrooms and bathrooms you need. If you walked around several houses of different sizes, like I've suggested in past episodes and on the BYHYU Facebook page, you should have some idea of what house size feels just right to you. Then consider your budget. Determine the number and approximate sizes of bedrooms and bathrooms that you'll need, and not just for your current circumstances, but also for the future. If you've already chosen your lot, bring a survey of your property. That way, the designer can draw a house that will fit nicely within your boundary lines. During the meeting with your house designer, keep these things in mind. Be open to suggestions from your designer. Even if you have lots of ideas like I do, ask questions like, do my design ideas make sense to you? Would you do anything differently to improve the flow, efficiency, or cost? Are there any downsides to the layout or space that I've designed? Listen to your designer's suggestions. He may come up with some ideas that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. Leave some room for the designer to actually design. And be honest from the very beginning. If your designer is showing you styles and designs that aren't to your liking, tell him. Be nice, but tell him the truth. You could say something like, that's really not my favorite, or it's okay, but it's just not my style. Or you could ask, what are some other options? You got to find the courage to be honest, or you'll end up with a house that you don't really like. That happened to one of my acquaintances. She felt bad about telling the architect and even her builder that she didn't like some of their ideas. And now she lives in a house that's nothing like what she dreamed of. If you have the type of personality that makes you hesitant to tell others what you really think because you're afraid that you might hurt their feelings, get someone else to do the dirty work for you, like your spouse or mother. Your house is too big of an investment to accept a design that you don't really like. But the truth of the matter is, most designers and architects know that their clients won't like every suggestion that they make, so they usually don't take rejection personally. Finally, let your designer know that before you finalize your house plans, you'll want a building inspector to approve the plans. That way, they can alert you to any potential problems that the plans might have before they're finalized. That's required in some regions, but it's just a smart idea whether their approval is required or not. Well, those are my suggestions for what to do before and during your house design meetings. Hopefully, doing some of those things will help your meetings go more smoothly. All right, let's do a couple of quiz questions before I say goodbye. Question number 1. Who has the most education, an architect or a house designer? The answer? Well, it depends. An architect must have a bachelor's degree and they must have completed an internship. But some house designers have the same level of education. The difference is that the house designer has not completed the licensing requirements needed to be an architect. There are also building designers who only have the education equivalent of a draftsman, which is a diploma or a certificate in construction drawing. Question number 2. Before meeting with your house designer or architect, you should do all of the following, except A. Have all your finishes and decor selections picked out, including flooring, tile, and paint colors. B. Have a list of must-haves and a wish list of things that you would like to have, but that aren't necessary. C. Have a general idea of how many square feet and how many bathrooms and bedrooms you want. Or D. Have a picture of some architectural styles that you like. The answer is A. You don't necessarily need to have your finishes and decor selected before you meet your house designer or architect. Those selections can be made later in the game. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It's not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, it's subject to change, and it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home. That's all I have for you this week. I hope you'll come back next week for another episode of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU.